Next is the other half of the brotherhood, is Doug Smith.
Hello everybody. I'll try and keep this short, but I think I might have a hereditary challenge there.
Talk as long as you want.
So, good evening, or good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to thank you all for attending today. Howard Smith, whose life we're all celebrating today, has touched us all deeply. I'd like to share some sage advice he shared with me concerning employer-employee disagreements. Don't take yourself so seriously. So with that, I'd like everybody to raise their right hand and give their head a little scratch. And that was something we all saw quite often. My father would do this in stressful times, and it could communicate many things. You could take it as a warning, as push one more button and you're toast. It could also mean he played one hell of a game of lacrosse, and I'm proud of him. So, it said a lot. Sometimes he would even scratch his head and whistle. And that's, you've done really well then. I think we might have got that in Game 6 in the Minto Cup. My father was a superior provider for our family, and as a youngster, he would fit me into his work schedule by taking me along to such exotic places as Squamish, Woodfire, Vancouver Wharves, and the coolest place, Annacis Island Car Dock. These long trips would foreshadow our weekend drives together in the future. Most kids wouldn't know what to do on those docks, but I was inspired by him at an early age. I fired one of his gangs because they took a longer break than provided. I even advised one of his workers to try and close the clamps a little tighter on a floss rock job. I had my father's back while he was up meeting with the ship's captain. Linterm one day, I had to use the dock bathroom, and I learned a fair amount about my dad's upcoming election while going to the loo. There were some new interesting words on that wall. I started to really understand the importance of my father on the waterfront at an early age. On weekends, we'd go for epic drives lasting 2 to 3 hours, often without a meal break. There is an industrial park south of Vernon that I'm not familiar with. We would enforce the container clause and visit the local garbage companies while my father informed me what Smith Wright Disposal was up to and who Waste Management had bought. Highlights were Bridgeview, Port Kells, and North Vancouver. When I see people with navigation aids in their cars, I laugh. I've never needed one thanks to my dad. During our drives, I would memorize every road and intersection to great detail. As a teenager, I picked up 2 of his favorite sports, rugby and lacrosse. I believe I received a head scratch when we beat those West Side Scoundrels, Cats RFC, in my first game of Premier Rugby. Somehow Dad's work ethic was gifted to me in sports, and I always used an East Ender mentality when I found myself meeting our friends from the West. He trained me to think that way on our many drives. He would tell me that after his games in the East End, the showers would be cold water, and the West Side boys always got hot water. Lacrosse was truly his favorite sport. When I was learning about the sport he loved, he became my coach, mentor, and friend. If we weren't practicing or had a game, we'd be off to watch the Bellies and Lakers. Dad would watch the entire Senior League, A-League at their training camps at Burnaby Lake Arena. He enjoyed watching practices. That's how much he loved the game. I started lacrosse at an older age, and we had a lot of catch-up to do. We spent every night at the rink from March till July. We enjoyed all those games and practices together, and he thrived as our team manager in junior, and we came close to winning a Minto Cup together. He was able to bring the lacrosse community together as the commissioner of the West Coast Senior B League. He had hoped to win the lottery so he could outfit all of the kids whose equipment costs were a barrier from the game. That was his goal. He felt that lacrosse could be an outlet for troubled youth. He drove me to my Alcan Cups, and I learned to like Hank Williams with him. When he retired, he went to estate auctions religiously and was able to find some excellent tools. Sadly, though, those gems were few and far between. He had fun, though, and it was always entertaining to find out what he picked up in that week and how much. Now, most men collect screws and nuts and bolts and put them in jars in the garage. My dad did not do that. What he did do was buy lots of nut and curate other people's screw and nut collections in his garage. I believe the count is 5 truckloads at this moment. I think there's 3 more to go from the garage to the recycling center. My dad loved the bargain. We enjoyed many political discussions. Most times we'd be in complete agreement on many topics, but he would disagree with my reasoning how I got there. And he would always share his correct assessment. He'd say, hold her right there. And that's when you knew it was serious. He would often start conversations with, did you read the New York Times this week? And I'd say, Dad, I don't have the kind of time that facilitates reading a newspaper that thick. He would read 3 newspapers a day all his life, if not more. He gave this gift to both of his sons. Sometimes we'd be out in public and I'd ask, who's that guy? And predictably he would say, that guy's a liberal! And he'd leave it at that. That's all you needed to know, I guess. He seemed to have everybody in his database. The last few months were very trying, and even when he was not well, he made it a priority to vote. We hit the advance polls and made sure Steve Harper was not to be in power. He'd be disappointed with the NDP's result, but happy to see Steve heaved. I learned to respect others' political beliefs from my father, and I asked him, do you dislike conservatives? He replied, they're not all bad people. Sometimes he would say, he's a conservative, but he's the bad guy. I think that my father could see the goodness in all people and not just typecast people along ideological grounds. When I think of how my father was on the board of Douglas College, he must have used these skills to help the process move along. You're not going to agree with everyone, but what you can do is bring people together and find a way to a solution. He was a skilled negotiator and able to put all the parts together. This summer we planted a fabulous garden, and he was able to pass along much wisdom. My feelings about gardening changed 180 degrees from when I was a kid. In the past, I was working for my father in the garden. Now we were working together to create perfect tomatoes and potatoes. He enjoyed the strawberries immensely and was pleased with our haul of green peppers. He loved the oxtail soup made perfectly by my mom with our onions. In closing, I've tried to use my father's advice today, and I've kept the tone light. In all seriousness, I miss my father dearly, and I will fondly remember him every time I visit a lacrosse box or an industrial park.